title of their lecture is Textual and Ethical Pluralities of the New Testament. Stipe, the floor is yours.
Thank you everyone. I'm sorry for turning back to you, but the cable is slightly too short for my outreach. As you see, Régis Dournet is a biblical scholar, and we started this as a reflection how to combine biblical scholarship with ethical scholarship, more precisely applied ethics. Unfortunately, Régis couldn't be with us today. So, on good days in supermarket, you get 2 for the price of 1. Now you get 1 for the price of 2. I'm sorry, you'll have to deal with that. Second clarification, the slides are both in English and French because we envisaged it as a bilingual presentation. So when the language switch is not a sign of mental decline, it was by design as that. If I will have time, which is a question mark, I might give a resume in French after each section. I cannot promise anything. Let's start. What is at the heart of the presentation is something that you all know, I hope. Well, the parable of the prodigal son. And everybody saw this image. It's even a cultural meme nowadays, and you all know the story. I'm pretty sure you all know the standard explanation. So it speaks about prodigal son. It's perceived as an ethical parable on forgiveness. And the classical interpretation, the mainstream one, is that father gives an unconditional forgiveness to his son. And then this model of forgiveness is then extrapolated to cultural and political realm. Very often, this is not seen just as family encounter, something that you should do to your prodigal son or daughter if you have one, but something that should be copied even on the level of communities, even in political realm, that even after a war or mass killings or genocide, there is still this imperative of unconditional forgiveness because the Bible tells us so. But well, we start the question whether there is more than this paradigm within the same text, where there are multiple paradigms of forgiveness within the same text, and where we should even question the need or necessity or even appropriateness of extrapolating this paradigm to all realm of political life.
Donc juste ici, vraiment un résumé en français, on est interrogé la question de pardon qui se trouve dans la parabole de fils prodigue. Donc qu'est-ce qui se passe dedans? Vous êtes bien sûr au courant avec l'interprétation classique. Un fils prodigue qui abandonne maison, son foyer, finalement la vie n'était pas au niveau de morale, et finalement il rentre chez soi, et c'est le père qui donne le pardon. Et c'est inconditionnel. Et donc généralement dans la culture allemande politique, c'est interprété pas uniquement comme parabole qui explique les relations familiales, mais aussi un modèle à imiter finalement, je dirais même émuler au niveau de politique de la société. Donc Régis et moi, nous avons posé la question, est-ce qu'il y a peut-être déjà dans le texte la pluralité de modèles de pardon? En plus, est-ce que c'est vraiment juste ou correct extrapoler l'interprétation de pardon qui vient de parabole à l'extérieur de monde biblique, ça veut dire la société dans le monde politique?
So here you see how the classical reading also led to a monolithical ethical interpretation of forgiveness. So Christian forgiveness based on this parable is something which is unconditional, which is a gift, which shows the mercy and establishes a model on different levels, individual, humanitarian, and political. So let's start with the text.
how it started. Our hypothesis was, it's not even a hypothesis, a general model of hermeneutics, every text has a plurality of meaning. And one interpretation rises over another when you put an accent on specific parts of the text. But the parts of the text which were the base of the interpretation, where forgiveness is unconditional, quick, and necessary, were the parts when the Father sees the Son, reacts immediately, and then accepts him in the household, and this is in opposition to the behavior of the other son. But let's take another look. So there's already in verse 20 the verse when he speaks that the Father was filled with its translation is compassion, it might be something more. He ran, put his arms around him and kissed him. You notice already that he never says that he pardoned him or that he had forgiven him. So this already the verb in Greek, which is relatively rare, does not speak really about compassion as such. It's a sudden strike of emotion where we even speak about your inner parts being destroyed. And then, based on this reading, Martin Nussbaum, among others, also said that this doesn't speak about forgiveness as such. It's simply an extreme emotional reaction of a parent which sees their son and reacts immediately. In forgiveness, you need time to think, reflect on the injury. And here, the reaction is immediate. Putting his arms around him and kissing him. Second part, which is rarely put in question, interrogated, where the Father, in this immediate reaction, also towards the project of the Son who comes. Take the cultural context here into account. The one who loses an honor in a culture where honor is important needs to re-establish that honor through good behavior. The son coming to a household might have this opportunity through hard work, but he's inaugurated immediately into family. That phase of regaining the respect is thwarted potentially. There's another ethics of an elder son, which is the ethics of accountability, that you need to gain something, which resonates in the first. And then there is somebody who's missing. It speaks about prodigal son, but it's only about father. There's also a mother of the prodigal son. The injury of the son touched the whole family, not just the father. However, father is the one who's seen as the center of forgiveness. The mother, who's also in this sense of injury, has right to forgiveness, is not mentioned in this part. En français, rapidement, donc on a interrogé la pluralité d'interprétations déjà dedans le texte. On a commencé avec même le concept de pardon, qui demande un certain nombre de réflexion. Après, ensuite, généralement. Mais est-ce qu'il y a dans la temporalité de cette parabole le temps pour penser? Verset 10, tout de suite, l'action de père est immédiate. Donc il est là, embrasser son fils, l'accepter. Et le verbe en grec explique quelque chose de plus fort que l'amour. C'est la passion qui tout de suite nous pousse à réagir. Donc peut-être c'est pas pardon, c'est simplement la réaction émotionnelle. On a des vrais cas de ça en fait. Ça c'est un peu commentaire à part. Dans les mémoriaux de Première Guerre mondiale, il y a parfois des témoignages de familles qui sont vraiment perdus entre guillemets ses fils. Le fils a été perçu comme mort, il est disparu, et finalement le fils est venu après 3 ans, 4 ans. Et la réaction était similaire de ça. Moi, je n'avais pas de temps à réfléchir, c'est simplement mon fils qui était mort et maintenant vivant. Puis, Est-ce qu'il y a une autre éthique qui est déjà dans le texte? Donc on a pensé éthique de regagner le respect de famille. Le fils qui a perdu le respect de famille, et même son entourage, même peut-être voisinage, avait peut-être la chance de regagner le respect. Et c'est l'action de père qui a empêché ça. Finalement, il y a quelqu'un qui est implicitement présent et pas mentionné. Et ça, c'est la mère. L'insulte envers la famille touche aussi la mère, mais la perspective, la mère, n'était pas prise en compte. So then we divided our reflection in 3 parts: text, context, and subtext. The text I already indicated, potential plurality of interpretation. What's also missing is an intertextual element of this parable with another part of Luke's Gospel. It only appears in Luke's Gospel. And it appears in the verses in the 17th chapter as another important passage on forgiveness, which says how many times we forgive, and you know the story. And yes, 70 times. Not soon. So we need to put in question, even if we take the parable of the prodigal son as a parable on forgiveness, is this exceptional example or something that should be repeated every time he loses his property and comes back? That's one. And second thing was the very title of a parable. Obviously in Greek text there is no titles. There is no prodigal son and then the title of the text following. The title comes very late, another influence of Aristotelian philosophy and ethics, and the ethics of moderation. But then there is a structural parable within the text. Son behaves excessively, unmoderate. Same as the father. And for that reason, in some publications, in some versions of the Bible, it's called the prodigal father, because he's the one who dispenses forgiveness the same way the son dispenses money, without moderation and without taking care what could be the consequences. Another thing to take account is the social context in which the whole procedure of giving the son the ring, the robe, is the ritual of social investiture. That resembles the one of the kings. And here, another reading also shows that the action is not solely of forgiveness, but also reinstituting father's sovereignty. It is him who reestablishes his position by establishing his right to forgive as a sovereign right. And then there's a perspective on the other side, and the peer pressure. So he's not angry by forgiveness. He's angry because he didn't have a chance to celebrate with his friends. He didn't get what he was due, basically. So what do we do here? Justement, très résumé, j'ai présenté des perspectives de fils aînés qui n'étaient pas finalement fâchés parce que le père appartenait à son fils. Il était fâché parce qu'il n'avait pas l'opportunité à célébrer, fêter avec ses amis de même manière comme l'autre fils avait l'opportunité à fêter. Et j'ai dit aussi que dans notre analyse, on a pris 3 axes d'analyse: texte, contexte et hypotexte, sous-texte. Ça veut dire quoi? Dans le texte, déjà, il y a un lien avec l'autre partie de l'évangile de Luc, où on parle de pardon en plusieurs fois. Et la question d'éthique qui se pose ici, même si on décide de suivre le modèle de pardon inconditionnel, est-ce que ce modèle à suivre 1000 fois, 7 fois, 2 fois, combien de fois? Et finalement, je vais parler tout de suite après, on a parlé aussi de possibilité de rétablir la souveraineté de Père, qui est l'importance du contexte. Dans le contexte, on parle le rite d'introduction de fils, dans la réintroduction de fils dans la famille, c'est le même rite qui est utilisé pour des rois, pour des représentatifs de pouvoir. Même si le pardon, c'est aussi l'acte où le Père établit sa souveraineté de donner le pardon et régner le foyer. So now, let's go back to the beginning. And after all these plural readings, question, why does such a plurality of possible ethics, which is already in text, leads to simplified models of models of ethics of forgiveness, and where does it lead us? So I said at the beginning, the standard model of forgiveness, Christian forgiveness more specifically, is that forgiveness should be unconditional, gift, which shows mercy, and which should be followed as a universal model, not just on the individual and communitarian level, also on political level. So let's go step by step. Unconditional, what to do when it's repeated. I'm going to details over. A gift, is the ethic of gift here applicable at all? Is the metaphor of gift a good metaphor for forgiveness at all? And finally, what might be the negative consequences of applying one model of forgiveness to all levels of society? So what would be what they say in economics externalities? The negative effects that your act causes on others, not you necessarily. This poem is a beautiful one, and it's the Ellison Fund. And it's titled and speaks about repetition of unconditional forgiveness. And it's the poem of the prodigal's mother. And it says, now the son was forgiven, but he left again. And she says, when he returned for a second time, the straps of his sandals broken, his robe stained with wine, it was not as easy to forgive. But then his father was long gone himself, leaving me with my other son, the sullen one, whose anger is the instrument he tunes from good morning on. I know there is no room for a man in the womb, or when I saw my youngest coming from far off, so small he seemed a kid, unsteady on his legs. She goes, what will you do? I told, remembering when he learned to walk. Shapeshifter. It looked like looking for water. The heat bends, it blurs everything. Brush, precipice, a shambles between us. Donc rapidement en français, c'est un point que personnellement j'adore. C'est le poème de la mère. Et il parle que le fils, après être pardonné, il était parti pour la deuxième fois. Elle raconte que pardonner pour la deuxième fois, c'était difficile. Le père était déjà mort, et elle avait l'obligation avec l'autre fils. Et comment réagir à cette situation? Est-ce que c'est possible de pardonner? Mais, curieusement, elle ne parle pas de pardon. Elle a vu son fils pour la deuxième fois, elle a fait pareil. À l'intérieur, elle a vu à nouveau un petit-fils. But then we are going back within the family settings. A second time,
it's difficult to give unconditional forgiveness. What about third or fourth or fifth? And what about situations where giving an amnesty or pardon or forgiveness made the situation worse? This was very frequently the case with guerrilla wars in Latin America, where war fractions were forgiven and given amnesty, only to do even worse. So should this model be applied to all situations? Rapidement, moi j'ai posé la question, est-ce que le modèle de pardon inconditionnel, qui est difficile à répéter même la deuxième fois, nous sert vraiment comme un modèle utile pour la politique de pardon? Nous avons des exemples, surtout des fractions terroristes, plutôt, qui ont reçu des amnesties et des pardons. Mais après ça, on continue la guerre, encore pire qu'avant. Et parfois le pardon inconditionnel pour produire des résultats, des effets très négatifs et pire qu'avant. Now the giftness. Why do we speak about forgiveness as a gift? It sounds very natural, I know. You're giving something. But let's think about this a little bit. This is a very common, not just in theology or philosophy. You have this in Paul Ricoeur, Derrida, the metaphor of gift determines the ethics of forgiveness. Let's dive deeper a bit. What happens when you give a gift? The gift is given on your own initiative or on supplication of somebody. It's out of your own volition. You never give a gift in response to an insult. The gift is a form of generosity, but generosity that flows from you as a free and without reciprocity. The gift in Bible, and it comes all the time. You speak about the gift of life, the gift of salvation, the gift of progenitor, but they do not come as a response to insult. The life is not given as a response to insult. So where gift is a good metaphor here is not self-evident at all. The forgiveness, on the other hand, unlike gift, is always a response. You cannot give forgiveness just out of your own initiative without prior offense. It doesn't make any sense. And secondly, gift can be a single act. Forgiveness is always a process. And sometimes of epiphenomenon of many acts that come together. Donc ici, on est interrogé même, est-ce que la métaphore de don est vraiment une bonne métaphore pour comprendre le pardon? Et à mon avis, non. Pourquoi? Parce que le don, généralement, c'est une action d'offrir à l'autre partie des biens, des services, soit par volonté propre, donc c'est l'initiative de vous, soit par réponse à une requête, sans entendre réciprocité ou de contrepartie. Dans la Bible, évidemment, on parle de don de la vie, salut, progéniture, etc. Donc le don, c'est quelque chose qui, moi, je demande, généralement. Est-ce que c'est pareil pour pardon? On ne donne pas un don à réponse d'insulte, généralement. Mais pardon est toujours donné comme une réponse. La vie n'est pas donnée comme une réponse. Vous comprenez la logique ici? Mais en même temps, la logique de don, métaphore de don, se répète tout le temps. Bien que ce ne soit pas la meilleure métaphore pour comprendre le pardon. Et je vais finir avec des conséquences négatives de pardon inconditionnel. Et moi, je vois au moins 3. Tout d'abord, pour des bénéficiaires de pardon, il y a un risque possible d'empêcher l'évolution morale. Pourquoi? Ce qui est souvent perçu comme pardon immédiatement
est capable de créer le changement moral, qui n'est pas garanti évidemment. Deuxièmement, pour les personnes qui pardonnent, il y a un risque de pardon précipité, ou peut-être des trivialisations de pardon. Il y a souvent des critiques de ça aussi, surtout dans la littérature philosophique, de cas où le genre se précipite de pardonner publiquement pour la mort de sa famille. Mais la question reste, est-ce que c'est simplement le signal public de valeur, ou peut-être, je suis un bon chrétien, c'était vraiment le processus de pardon. Et finalement, il y a un risque d'un pardon imposé. Pourquoi ce risque-là? Parce que, précisément, si on utilise le modèle de pardon familial comme modèle politique, on peut arriver jusqu'à l'abus de pardon facilement. Imaginons un gouvernement qui décide que chaque victime doit pardonner pour la réconciliation d'État. Inconditionnellement, souvent. Quel est le fait? Quelles sont les conséquences? Qui porte des conséquences négatives ici? Et finalement, il y a des risques pour le concept de pardon eux-mêmes. Le risque de réduire différentes formes des relations sociétales, sociales, comme interpersonnelles, familiales, communautaires et politiques, un paradigme unique, et finalement le risque d'agrédissement des multiples formes de temps qui est conçu pas uniquement comme le temps en progression, mais aussi temporalité, le lien entre le passé et l'avenir, et aussi le tempo. Donc, comme rapidité, avec l'échange, à trois sens, en seul acte de pardonner facilement. So now switching back to English, we envisaged at least three also negative externalities of understanding, of using one ethical model of forgiveness for all sorts of societal and social situations. One, the negative consequences could be for the receivers of the forgiveness. That there's a risk that this might impede their moral evolution. If you operate under the assumption or hypothesis that giving forgiveness immediately creates moral change in them. In some yes, in some not, as I mentioned before. There's a risk for people who forgive. Risk of trivialization of forgiveness into something that's given easily, but also even more, this is I find it more important, of imposing forgiveness. And why this appears? Because if you apply the same model of instantaneous, immediate forgiveness on the political level, you might end up in a situation when a government says, after crimes, genocides, and sufferings, now we need to forgive for the reconciliation of the state. It might be a good goal, but the question is, who is the one who bears the consequences for the second time? And the third risk are for the concept of forgiveness itself. If we, again, using one and single paradigm, we are flattening multiple relations, interpersonal, familial, communitarian, political, and multiple forms of time. And time, when I say time, I don't understand just progression of time, but also temporality, relation about past and future, and tempo, the speed of action, into one single paradigm. I have 1 minute left, which is just enough for a conclusion. Et c'est simple. La fixation de sens unique de texte biblique réduit l'imagination morale. C'est notre hypothèse. Par contre, la découverte de la pluralité de lecture textuelle mène à la découverte d'une éthique pluriforme de parole. And just in English, the fixation of a single sense of the biblical text reduces significantly our moral imagination. And, as we try to show, and I hope I achieve to some degree, rediscovery of multiple meanings of the biblical text
also reinvigorates our moral imagination and leads us to discovering pluriform ethics of forgiveness. My time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor ODAK. That was an interesting lecture. I think all the speakers has inspired us to further questions, and the time is in for you.